Welcome to this Perito expert talk from World of Careers. Perito in Brazilian Portuguese means expert, and that's how we selected from World of Careers and Prime Academy. We want to bring in expert and share valuable insights for academic community. We have our first expert in front of us. He doesn't need an introduction. His name is G Balasubramanian. He's 74 years young, and if you have been in teaching for some time, you should have known this face. He's the former CBSE Director for Academics. I consider him as one of the busiest person in the planet. In fact, a couple of weeks before, when we talked to him, he told he had 14 webinars scheduled for this month, but I think the count could have been 20 or 30 by this day. He authors in Tamil, English, and Hindi, and has wide range of interest from philosophy, psychology, poetry to literature. And he's a people person. Welcome him to this expert talk show.
Thank you, Venkatesh. It's nice interacting with you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. We will start with the questions. The most happening event in education system is the NEP. I think everywhere we are talking about NEP, and there are webinars happening. But what we want to do, we wanted to hear it from you with your experience of so many decades. I think you will give us valuable insights and even give us clarity on how NEP is coming out. With that, we will ask you the first question. What are your three vital impressions on NEP?
Well, thank you, Mr. Venkatesh. And I think it's a very timely topic we are talking about. If you want to look at three important vital impacts of the NEP 2020, I would say number one, this NEP is highly disruptive because once you look at the national education policies of yesteryear, I would rather say that we had the first document on school education, secondary education by Dr. A.R. Mudaliar Commission in 1952. And then we had Dr. Kothari Commission report, which was 1966-68. And then we had the National Policy of Education in 1986. And then we had a National Curriculum Framework in 2005. Historically, if you look into the 86 policy was focusing on diversification of education to academic stream as well as the vocational stream, because the focus was on developing the workforce. When you come to 1986, the thrust was on developing a technological platform on the ICT. The third 2005, the focus was on globalization, subsequent to the UNICEF document, which said that 21st century learning should have some common goals for the entire world of learning. And therefore, we had to fall in line with the recommendations of the UNESCO. But this 2020, if you look at, the very vision says that it is an India-centric document. So that is a very important factor because most nations now are celebrating their national perspectives and national visions. And therefore, that is a very important impact that we have. The second factor, as I said, when I said it's disruptive, in the sense that we had a 10+2 pattern of education for the last 40+ years, as from 1968 onwards. So the objective for which this 10+2 scheme came is probably now lost track of, because we have not been very successful with the idea of vocational education. And moreover, the knowledge industry, if I may call it so, the perspectives of knowledge industry, knowledge management, knowledge processing, knowledge capturing and delivery have all changed. So we have to fall in time with the changes, and therefore moving away from 10+2, we have come to 5+3+3+4, which is based on more the growth profile, development profile of the students based on their age. That is a total disruption that has happened, and the schools have got to get into this platform. Number two. The third thing is that this policy seems to be focusing on the learnability of the learner rather than the learning of the learner. That really means that the opportunities for learning, the scope for learning, is expanding with a greater focus on self-learning rather than the teacher-led learning. I think that's exactly what we are looking for building a self-reliant India. And therefore, I believe that these three factors, when I said the first one, which I said was on the India-centric policy. The second one was the disruption of the structure. The third is the change in the learning culture, right? Very important views of the session.
Thanks a lot for that perspective. Now, when we talk about NEP, of course, the primary beneficiary is supposed to be the students who are going to be the future of this world. But what is the impact of NEP on teachers and teaching? Because the positive impact on teachers and teaching, it's going to have cascading down effect on every other hierarchy.
Well, that's a very interesting question. The draft document of the policy had dealt extensively on the status of teacher education in this country. Unfortunately, for the last 2-3 decades, the quality of teacher education has been extremely inadequate because the methodology, the curriculum, and the pedagogy for the teacher training were not commensurate and in synergy, harmony with what was required for the schools. Secondly, the latest researches in cognitive sciences very clearly says that there is nothing called teaching, right? It says it's all about learning. So the idea of a teacher sitting on an ivory tower and delivering knowledge is no more valid. The teacher becomes a co-learner, teacher becomes a facilitator, a mentor, a handholder, and that is a perspective of a good teacher. And the national policy acknowledges the changing domain of the teacher. If you really, recall, Arabindo, when he postulated the policies on education, the first statement, we call it, the three policies of, Arabindo. Number one is that, the first principle of teaching is that nothing can be taught, right? The second, he says that, the learner has to consult his own mind for growth, right? The third is learning always happens from near to far, right? And I think this policy has woven all the three. And taking the first statement that you cannot teach people, and neurosciences has validated that learning is different from the so-called teaching. And therefore, the entire curriculum for teachers and the entire perspective and mindset of teachers has to undergo a dramatic change. And I could see in the policy a very strong advocacy for this principle to shift the paradigm of teachers, to shift their role in the classroom as facilitators. I think that's a very important sign of the policy.
Wow, thanks a lot. I think this is one of the impactful thing for India because the teaching and teaching, a teacher and teaching, it is going to have a significant positive impact on students and the society at large. Okay, thanks a lot for that perspective, sir. I'll move on to the next question. I want to read out from the policy. Understanding the diversity and interstate migration. The policy is recommending wherever possible, the medium of instruction until grade 5, preferably grade 8, will be home language, local language, mother tongue, or regional language. My question is, if this is true, we might end up learning only through local or mother tongue till 5th standard or 8th standard. Would it not widen the gap or the disadvantage between people learning in a kind of an English and the local language? Because at higher studies, we may have to catch up. So what is your perspective on this?
Not necessarily. I would rather say that this dimension of the policy has not been really understood. I would rather like to focus on the word wherever possible. That's one important dimension. The second factor is that education, more so on the primary level, is on the school level, is more on the concurrent list. Therefore, the state has also equal responsibilities in discharging the quality and the direction of education. Therefore, the policy is not a law. policy is not an act. It is recommendatory, and therefore the states will have the flexibility to adopt position and articulate the policy according to the local needs. That's another issue. But then coming to the medium of instruction, please note that world over in most countries, mother tongue has been the medium of instruction, be it in Japan or China or anywhere else, and therefore there is evidence research to show that cognition, both in terms of quality and quantity, is much better. Understanding is much better, and the level of applications is much better when a child learns through the mother tongue. There are no debates about this issue in the world over. Nevertheless, the brain researchers have also indicated that a child up to the age of 8 can learn as many languages as possible. Some researchers indicate that you can go even up to 5 languages. That's the capacity or the learnability of the brain. But then it all depends on the individual, learner. So, to me, moving from one language to another, especially if it's a mother tongue, is not a problem. As a matter of fact, I have gone through my education only in Tamil medium, right? But nevertheless, I was able to reposition myself. That's the beauty of the concept of education. Concept of education is not schooling. Concept of education, right, is to create a mindset of the child to transfer his erstwhile learning to a newer situation. So if a child has learned one language, the skills of learning that language moves from one language to another, right? That's exactly this policy talks about, learning to learn, right? So my question is, why only mother tongue to English or something? You can learn as many languages as possible. Therefore, the policy talks about multilingualism. As a matter of fact, they have recommended bilingual approach to teaching at the primary level so that the cognitive competencies of children are well taken care of, right? So I would say that it is more a myth, right? Is how people interpret. We are not going to close down any English medium school, not at all. But the question is, if someone believes that the quality of education is good only through English medium, it's sad, it's not correct, right? You could be an excellent learner even through your mother tongue, even through the regional languages, for that matter, any language. That's my perception.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I think what we are hearing is language is more a skill, and that becomes the facilitating tool for you to acquire knowledge.
Absolutely, you are right.
Thank you for that brilliant perspective. Moving on to the next question, I think there is lots of emphasis on vocational training. Just wanted to know, what is the big picture? Why is it relevant at this point of time? And what is expected to be achieved through such an internship? Is it just an add-on, a hobby creation, or even a career creation?
That's a very interesting question. The word term vocational education, over the years had become a kind of a stigma in the minds of people, as if it is only for people who are poor performers in terms of academic competencies. And when we had this 10+2 system of education introduced, it was conceived that nearly 65% of the total population passing out of class 10 will go to vocational education, to create a skill force required for the country, and nearly 35% will go for academic linear mobility. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. Only less than 5% of the total population were moving towards vocational education, because the stigma that people who are not academically brilliant will go there created more of a roadblock to reaching out to vocational education. So from that time onwards, the gap between jobs which are white collar jobs and the blue collar jobs, and hands-on jobs is a kind of social disparity had existed. But given the changes that happens world over today, that hands-on skills are very, very important for various reasons. Number one, it creates a a self-concept and self-esteem. And secondly, it provides attitude towards the dignity of labor. Third, self-reliance is very, very important in the changing situation. Thirdly, common operative knowledge with tools and systems are required, immaterial of the fact whether you are an engineer or a doctor or a chartered accountant and all that. So the objective of this policy in class 6 appears to be to create a hands-on competency which is locally relevant, right? And therefore the students are required to go and work on an internship for about 10 days. And I think that's going to be a great fun, a great, we are not looking at creating a child labor. If somebody thinks of that, that was a misconcept. It is to create, empower the psychomotor domain so that the child enjoys how a pottery is done, how graphics is done, right? How people work on field. Why not? And therefore, I think it's very important to integrate this kind of a sensitivity in the learners. That's the right thing that could have happened, and I'm happy about that.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir. I think even in the current system, what we see is, during annual holidays, there are in-house workshops for a 10-day residential workshop wherein people teach many things. But I think now we are making it formalized, available for anybody, so that when they become adults, they are not dependent on others for basic things.
It is a kind of integration of head, hand, and heart. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Now, when we are looking at the NEP, one thing which was kind of disruptive sense, and board exams would be made easier, and they also mention about need for coaching classes to go down or get eliminated. But I just wanted to understand what is the intention behind these two statements. Is it practically possible to eliminate a coaching class when there are disparities in teaching? It's not the same across India and presence of exams. And most important question is, when we make the board exams easier, how are we going to handle the competitive exams, which are tougher? Would it not be a challenge for kids? These are the two questions combined into one.
See, I think we need to understand the term coaching in a better perspective. Coaching is a kind of scaffolding, right? Facilitating, empowering. For example, when you talk about the sports, even great captains of the team, be it football or cricket, they have got coaches, right? International players have got coaches, right? So the point basically is coaching has a different perspective. But what has happened in education is creating coaching for an examination purpose. Creating coaching for an exam, which is wrong, okay? And therefore, what seems to be important today is that the entire joy of learning is focused towards a performance in an examination. And what is an examination? You pass an examination when you get 35% marks. That really means we have accepted 65% of inadequacy and incompetence, right? Therefore, the paradigm should shift towards maximization of learning, the joy of learning, and therefore that will be possible only when there is a passion in the learner. And I think the kind of competition with what we have assured in at this point of time is a negative competition, right? Competition has always to be within the self, right? What I was earlier, what I am now, what I would be, that has to be the pursuit. And now, that the UNESCO document says there is a royal conflict between being and becoming, right? And these examinations, competitive examinations, only help you to become and not be. Okay? So, I think with the paradigm shifting towards, making the assessments at the board level little flexible and easy, and providing, examinations for entry at the collegiate level, where the focus could be more on aptitudes of, the subject, we would be doing a great service to society at the point of time. This is indeed the disruption. Even in 1980s policy, we talked about the irrelevance of certificates at the point of time. Even today, what we find is people, get, three important words: certification, qualification, and education. People get certified, but they are not qualified because they don't have the knowledge. People are qualified, but they don't have a certificate, right? For example, when I go for an electrician or a carpenter, he comes and does all the job to me, but he doesn't have a certificate. So he is qualified, but not certified. So we have certified people, qualified people. But then education is much more than certification and qualification, right? So let us not put coaching classes in competition with the school system. I think, you know, if you go to US, people used to have command classes and others, people going around for learning. I think the support system for school, the students at all point of time could be diverse, right? A person goes to study music, you know, person goes to take some sports, tennis class, whatnot. Others, all these are only coaching, right? So that does not bring coaching into the perspective of preparing a child for an examination, right? And what has happened, the outcome of coaching, right from LKG, parents are comfortable to put the child on coaching. I think that is the retrograde effect of the coaching system. Okay. And therefore, we need to enlarge the idea of coaching as empowerment systems, facilitating systems, and confidence building systems, rather than engaging with competitions.
Okay, I think I'm also hearing it is not the quantity. Everybody should not get into coaching centers. You should decide based on a case-to-case basis. If there is an empowerment, a development, then coaching. I think that's a very good perspective.
I have a add-on query on this. While I mean, you made it very clear on the purpose of coaching and the unfortunate state of affairs of coaching in the country, but with this demand and supply gap in terms of availability of an or eligibility into required or dreamed of institutions or courses, when there is a scarcity by whatever reason, how do we balance that with the adverse effects of coaching?
Well, I'm little apprehensive about your term, what do you call demand and supply. Now, if you see, for example, in our own Tamil Nadu, you know, how many seats in engineering colleges were vacant last year in the year? Nearly 100,000. And almost everybody who got, you know, around 40% plus were able to get into an engineering college, right? Then what are you talking of quality for entrance and competition and all that? This is a kind of, what do you call, you know, mindset which is created. For example, IIT has got a few thousand seats, right? But how many candidates are appearing for that? So there is a gap between not demand and supply. There is a gap between ambition and performance. Though I know I'm not going to really do, I don't have an aptitude. You know, I have seen conducting already examinations, several examination centers. When I walk through, I found boys and girls sitting, you know, in the examination hall without doing anything. And there have been cases when I asked why you were not attending the paper. No, sir, my father is waiting outside, so I don't want to go back. I've seen the cases. So a lot of these things happen because of the family pressure, peer pressure, and also the parental pressure. And I think you know, with the kind of universities, colleges, and others which is going through, we have seats. But my only question is, do we have that kind of higher institutions which could deliver that kind of quality or ability to lift the quality of those students who have come from a very moderate performance? That's a big question.
Agreed. Adria.
Okay, thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, sir. Next question is, there is a mention about NTA and an NTA exams will be conducted. Will selection to undergraduate based purely on NTA results, or will it also consider 12th results? And can colleges and universities run a parallel NTA equivalent entrance test? That's the next
one. I think this is anybody's guess at this point of time. You cannot really say what will happen. But the point basically is that you know, the NTA entrance is a very, what do you call, I mean, safe way of gaining entry into the system, and the colleges will find a kind of a yardstick or a platform on which they can evaluate their students. But then I think there will be great flexibility in terms of admission criteria, and I think we'll have to wait and see how things are going to shape, what the UGC or National Institute of Higher Education, which is going to be formulated, will talk about, and how the state governments will react to that, because they have got state policies also. And I don't think we should come to any conclusive decision at this point of time, because the matter is still, the ball is still in the movie stage.
Thank you, sir. I think we are midway, and we will conclude the part one, and we have another part two coming up. So with that, thanks for your valuable time. We will meet you in the next part soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.